1978 it all began for her, 7 years ago. And for 3 of those, the last 3, in fact, ever since the Dreaming album, we have heard nothing from Kate until now. And the release of a new LP, Hounds of Love on one side, The Ninth Wave on the other. A concept piece that's prefaced with these words from Tennyson. Wave after wave, each mightier than the last, till last a ninth one, gathering half the deep, and full of voices slowly rose and plunged roaring, and all the wave was in a flame. From now till 6:30, we bring you our exclusive interview with Kate Bush and hear tracks from the new LP from compact disc. What better way to start with everyone's introduction to Hounds of Love, the current single, Running Up That Hill. Running Up That Hill from Hounds of Love, now the new Kate Bush album, or one side of the album, I should say, it's really called that. 3 years, Kate. It seems a very long time since the last album. What have you been doing?
Yeah, so I think this is the one question that is inevitable, really, isn't it? Well, after the last album, I had to take a break in order to create a new energy for this album. If I'd have started writing straight away without getting new stimulus, it would have been exactly the same energy that was on the last album. And I wanted to go for a very different kind of music, more positive, I think. And also I wanted to be brave enough to go ahead with the idea of a second side of the album actually being a form of concept. Which took a bit of time to actually get up the courage to do. And
it must obviously take a long time to write. I think we'll talk about that in detail when we play some tracks. But I mean, everyone's calling you Greta Garbo and Lord Lucan and people like this, aren't they? To disappear for 3 years, you know. It must have been quite a difficult decision to take that long over it, really.
Well, I think the best decisions that I've made have happened in the last 3 years. I moved out of London. I spent some time at home, which I needed to do. Got in some new stimulus, found a new dance teacher. And most importantly, built and equipped our own recording studio, which we then recorded all the material in.
So does that mean then that you've got the freedom and the time to really experiment?
Absolutely. One of the worst things about working in commercial studios is, besides the distractions of outsiders and phones all the time, is that it's costing a phenomenal amount of money every hour. And if you want to experiment with things that take maybe a day and you want to go away and think about them, it's just prohibitive. You can't work that way.
But now, you see, one of the reasons that people must think that you disappeared was that the last album didn't go down terribly well with a lot of people, did it? I mean, is that disappointing and depressing?
Well, no, it's not actually. I mean, what I find strange is that particularly the media approach to the record was that it was not successful. But for me, I felt it was incredibly successful in that it made the top 3 in this country straight away. And I think the problem was that the singles didn't do well. But the one single that did do well off that album was timed a year before the release of the album, so perhaps it wasn't timed very well. But I was really pleased with that album, and I think the feedback that I've been getting as people gradually get into it is wonderful. I'm very pleased. And what I wanted to do is get rid of the problems I'd had on the last album, i.e. demos that I then had to totally recreate from scratch in the master studio, which I can do properly here, where I come in and actually write the tracks in the studio.
Well, now, look, we've talked about there being 2 distinct sides to the album, and the Hounds of Love one, which is like individual songs as such, they all seem to be interested in a particular area. I mean, you're going into the way relationships work. I mean, is this a preoccupation in terms of your lyrics, do you think?
I think it's to do with my life, that relationships are incredibly important, as I think they are in everyone's life. I think really, well, the vast majority of pieces of work that are written about are to do with relationships between people, because that's what it's all about, really, isn't it? The feedback and the interlinking and the not working of people together. It's a fascinating thing.
And funnily enough, of course, it goes back to Wuthering Heights, doesn't it, really? I mean, that sort of, that sort of almost destructive relationship, the destructive attraction. Has it always been an interest and a lyrical interest for you?
Yes, I think so. And again, it's a lyrical interest because it does interest me, the way that people can tear each other apart and yet they love each other. I think it's an irony. I think it's the irony of situations that are fascinating.
I don't want to press you and talk in personal terms, but clearly it has a personal reference as well, doesn't it? I mean, a personal relevance, I suppose, any lyric that you write.
I think so, in as much as it's expressing how I feel at that time, but then it's not necessarily autobiographical, which is something that does tend to be pushed on writers. As soon as they sing a lyric from a personal point of view, where they sing, I do this, I think this, it's not necessarily autobiographical, but it is expressing something that you feel at that time, perhaps about someone else rather than yourself.
Let's play another song from the album anyway, The Big Sky. Introduce this for us.
The Big Sky is really about someone sitting, watching clouds in the way they change. And I very much wanted to get a very positive feeling musically, again, that went with the lyrics, and the sense of perhaps the second flood coming, and how perhaps it's the fools who are the ones that aren't the fools.
The Big Sky from the new Kate Bush album, Hounds of Love. Kate's talking about it with us this afternoon. Extraordinary vocal tricks going on there. I mean, this is obviously what the experimentation you've been doing in the studio here. An incredibly versatile instrument, your voice.
It's very useful that I can experiment here in that way, yes. And again, when I'm writing the songs, quite often the backing vocals are actually a part of that early stage. They're not always something that comes at a later stage. They're just part of the song from the word go. You
seem to be still learning how to use your voice and learning new ways too.
I think if I wasn't learning, I should stop, because when you stop trying to look for new things, when you stop trying to experiment, you're just doing the same thing you did before. And that's something I really don't want to do. It takes me a long time to do something, so I want that thing to be new and different. Otherwise, what's the point of doing it, really?
To quote from another review of the album, though, which have all started coming out just around about now, it's a very sexy voice. It is a very sexy voice, isn't it? I mean, you're aware of this yourself, you know.
I think that's very interesting and very surprising that people say that.
I mean, I'm surprised you're surprised, frankly, because it seems something that you should use and make the most of.
I'm surprised that you're surprised and I'm surprised. No, it's very interesting. What do you think they find sexy about it?
I don't know. I mean, I think it seems to have a range and a depth sometimes, which suggests, I don't know, more going on than just the words. I mean, you seem to use... no, you know something there. You seem to use the emotion, an emotional quality in your voice to suggest more than simply the words.
I think the voice is totally that, an emotional instrument. And it's just fascinating for me that it should be explained in a sexual way rather than purely emotional. I suppose there are lots of links, though, there. And I suppose the intimacy of someone singing to you, if there is emotion in it, then perhaps that strikes up sexual notes. I don't know.
There's another thing there, you know. I mean, to continue, maybe I'm talking about my own preoccupation here as well. But your records also, sometimes they quite scare me, you know.
Well, that's great if they scare you, because I think definitely some tracks, they're meant to be scary, and it's always very difficult for me to know how people do interpret the stuff at the other end. So if you're getting scared by some of it, if it's the right track, then I'm really pleased. I think what definitely inspires me is films that I watch that I find really scary, and there are a lot of people who do enjoy being scared by films. But I think what I like is the intensity of films when they start scaring you, when they're good. Like, for instance, Don't Look Now. It's just such an incredible experience. And when I write things, I ideally would love to be doing to people what happens to me when I'm affected by these things. So I think that's definitely the inspiration there.
We ought to talk about the other side now, really, didn't we? The concept side. It must have been a bit worrying, a bit daunting, really, just to approach the idea of a whole side of an album about one subject, because, I mean, you know, everyone says that sort of thing went out in the 70s, don't they? I mean, it seems an old-fashioned idea.
Yes, which was in a way why I felt I had to think very carefully before I went for it, because of all the preconceptions that are very negative about such a thing. But I feel that's so wrong, because if anything, music is so much more akin to that kind of thing than being short stories like pop music is. I mean, classical music, opera, they all explore extensions of music. They get you involved. Again, more like films than short stories. And I think when it works, it's even more effective than a short piece of work.
So what's the story of the Ninth Wave?
It's about someone who is in the water for the night, and it's about the past, present and future coming to wake them up, to keep them awake. They're very tired, and they just have to keep going till morning. And in many ways it's about someone going through an experience and coming out the other end, hopefully having learnt an awful lot about themselves during the process.
But is this person drowning or what?
They're trying not to drown. They're trying to stay awake until someone comes to save them.
Talk us through it, because I mean, there's something like I don't know how many tracks now. I mean, 5 or 6 tracks that go up to make the one piece. We're going to play "Waking the Witch." What's actually happening at this point?
At this point, they've just been woken up by friends who have come to stop them drowning as they go under the water. And as they surface, they see someone in the distance who comes close, and as they do, it's a witch finder. And it's the whole thing of having just saved themselves from drowning, there's now this apparition that is trying to drown them again, in this sort of parallel story of a witch finder trying to drown the witch. Whether she's innocent or guilty, she will die, and the water's the linking factor, really.
Waking the Witch from the Ninth Wave, the second side of the new Kate Bush album. It seems to be based on Tennyson. I mean, there's some words anyway on the sleeve from Tennyson.
Yes, that was really something that came after the concept, in that I felt it was always nice to have a passage that was used to quote a situation that came from a poet. I've always liked that, again, when I've read books or whatever, and there's a little passage at the front that sort of sums it up. And the quote that we chose was from The Coming of Arthur, and it's really Tennyson talking about how he feels that waves work in a series of 9, and so there's a big build-up and a complete cycle within 9 waves, which seemed rather nicely relevant to what we were doing here.
It's very demanding, I think, a very demanding piece. I mean, lyrically especially, by which I mean, I'm not absolutely certain about what goes on, but I think that's probably a good thing, isn't it?
Yes, I would very much like the idea of people listening to the album again and again, and as they hear it more, they go deeper into it. But what's nice is the feedback I've had so far. People are so aware of what's happening in there. It's very pleasing, because again, you're never sure if it's a bit too obscure for people to grasp, especially say 2-3 listens. But so many people really have understood what's happening in there.
Is that a compromise, though, you feel yourself having to make all the time? That something that's satisfying to you still has to be direct enough to get through to people fairly quickly, at least?
No. No, I think I always tend to just write something hoping that I've done the best for that particular song or whatever it is, and then just hope that people understand and like it. I don't think you can compromise because you're not sure, because they could well be where you are in your head, so I think you have to play to that.
I suppose the danger is, someone in your position can get very cut off.
Yes, I think it's important that you certainly don't isolate yourself, especially in terms of just moving with people in the business. But I think to a certain extent you can't help isolation being a predominant thing when you're recording, because especially now I have my home studio, the majority of the time there's only 2 other people in the room with me, and we work very intensely, so it is quite an isolated thing. Again, novelists, for instance, they shut themselves away for hours and they have to discipline themselves to do it. And I think in a way that's the hardest thing, is disciplining yourself in such an isolated situation.
It wasn't the joy of performance that encouraged you at the beginning, because people seem to come to music from 2 ways. They either want to go up on stage and do it, or they want to sit in the studio and write and create that way.
Yes. I get incredible enjoyment out of both, and they're 2 totally different worlds, which is again why I enjoy both, because they are so different from each other. There's the spontaneity of a tour, which you just can't beat, being up on the stage, and if something goes wrong, you just got to cope with it, and everyone's out there with you, hopefully. It's wonderful. And the studio is so rewarding, because you can spend as much time, hopefully, creating the best thing you can for that song, which is so important.
But you've only ever done 1 tour. You've only actually ever... Didn't you like it the first time, or what?
I loved it. I really loved it, and I learnt such a lot from it that was very important for the things that have come since. But my projects become so involved once I'm in them that there's just been no time to do one. Since that last tour, I needed another 2 albums worth of material, which left me at the end of the last album. And it just didn't feel the right time to tour. So here I am at the end of this album, and if anything, I feel a very strong urge to try and get some visual projects happening before another tour. But it's not that I don't want to, it's just really finding the time and the moment.
Are you going to do it again, though?
Well, I have been saying for the last 6 years, it must be now, that I would love to. And I would love to.
Well, I'm not going to let you get away with this, because obviously you have said it for years.
I know. Well, It really depends on this visual project, in inverted commas, because if I can get that together, then that could be an extremely time-consuming process. And if I don't, then there's a very suitable time for a tour. So I think I should just say I would love to. I would have to see what happens.
But you put so much effort into that one tour, and people are still talking about it. I remember seeing it on TV, I think, as well. It was on there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, are you going to have to do all that again? Are you going to have the same approach to the tour as you seem to have the album, you know?
That's, again, the thing, that where you enter a project and, you know, you think you're walking into quite a small room like the TARDIS, but when you get in there, it's enormous. And I think that's a bit like nearly everything I do. And that's, again, why doing a tour requires so much thought, because it is a time-consuming process. But I'd love to, and I think, actually, it could be much better than the last tour, because some of the material lends itself very well to theatrical visuals.
But isn't there a plan now to do the Ninth Wave as a video project?
Yes, I'd rather call it a film or a filmio project.
Yes.
But yes, I would very much love to turn that into the visual piece that it was written around originally, as all part of the concept.
Slight doubt here, you know, from my point of view, in as much as I think the pictures are better on the record very often. Do you know what I mean? You can explain things away too much by seeing them represented visually.
Yes, I think you're right. And I think that's a big danger with videos in general, in that it sort of takes away from the song somehow. But I can't help but feel that if you have the right combination of visuals with the right audio, you're going to get something very special. And in a way, it creates its own entity. It's neither just a visual nor just the song. It's a completely different thing in its own right. And I thought The Wall was really the best thing I've seen anyone attempt in terms of a concept, in that the record was brilliant, the stage show was brilliant, and the film, whether you liked it or not, was revolutionary. I mean, they're really the first people to do a feature film to just a piece of music without any dialogue, and it all being centred around the music. And I felt they were doing something very interesting there, and I'd like to think that if we could do it as well as it should be done, and we won't do it if we can't, that this could be very interesting. But I know what you mean. So
another piece of music now anyway, Jig of Life. Traditional, folk music. I mean, is that still a big influence on you as a writer?
Yes, absolutely. And I'd say even more so in that now I'm being able to express the influence from the source rather than expressing it in an indirect way through my own music.
Well, we'll talk about this track, because you're just saying, you know, you find it very, very difficult now to actually talk about the music you're making.
Yes, I do. I think you put so much effort into recording the thing that then to talk about it in a way is very difficult, because it's all been said within the piece of music.
It's what we were saying before, really, about explaining it all away.
Yes, and I think, but especially me sitting here talking, I mean, I don't feel I can express in any way what the music expresses for me.
Let's just play it then.
Thanks. I've been very, very lucky all the way through my life, really. I've had so much encouragement from friends and people around me, but I can't help but feel that the essence of getting anywhere is just really hard work. You've got to work really hard, and you've got to fight from the minute you step into a situation to get what you want.
Have you had to fight? Because I think that people would tend to see you as having been very fortunate, you know, being discovered very early. I think David Gilmour was originally suggested, you know, to the record company, and that I wonder if you ever have been hungry for success. Do you know what I mean? It seems to have happened almost too easily.
I don't know if I've ever been hungry for success. I don't think, in a way, that's the thing that motivates me. Again, you know, this attitude that people have about the last album, that it didn't sell as many as the one before, that's not what motivates me or upsets me. What pleases me is that I was very happy with that album. I felt I did what I wanted to artistically, and success is something that either comes or doesn't, and that's another stage of it. I do rely on success to a certain extent in order to make another album, to do the projects I want, because obviously a lot of finance has to come from me. But beyond that, I don't think success is as important to me as the actual work.
I was reading The Sun the other day, 20 Secrets of Curious Kate Bush. Did you read that?
No, I didn't read it, but I've heard about it from a few friends, and what's frustrating is that I haven't even talked to The Sun, but the way they put it is that I have communicated with them. But I suppose in a way it's quite flattering, because it suggests that there's interest in me. However, how silly what they write is.
But that's what I was going to say, really, because you have come back after 3 years of being away, and there you are. It's as though you've never been away. Does it feel strange? I mean, you must be very pleased that it's been, that you've been welcomed back.
I'm very pleased, yes, I am. It's very moving in a way to think that people haven't forgotten me. But from my point of view, it's similar in that I haven't really stopped working for the last 3 years. It was only the break at the beginning of '83 that I took to just try and organise where I wanted to go. And ever since there, we've been getting the studio together and recording and putting out the videos and all that. So I haven't really stopped.
No, but the business doesn't have a very long memory, does it? And people always tell you that people who buy records don't have very long memories either. And I bet people have been reminding you of that fact for the last 3 years.
Yes, but I think the fact that I've managed to do it just proves that they're wrong. It's that thing again, you've just got to believe in what you feel is right. And I would much rather take the risk of being away for 3 years and coming up with something that I've really worked hard on than putting out an album every year and taking the risk of it not being very good.
Will it be another 3 years, though, do you think, before the next album?
Oh, God, I hope not. I mean, it's actually very frustrating for me that things take so long. I don't enjoy the way time flies so much when I get involved in projects, but I don't have any choice because once the project gets a hold of me, really, it just drags me along behind it, and I'm hanging on for dear life, just hoping I can do it justice. So it's really up to the whole process quickening up. But I do feel that now we've got our own recording studio, that can't do anything but help. I can come in here when I get time to just write and I think it could be done a lot quicker. The problem is finding the best material as well. I mean, you need to write, say, 20 songs to get as many as you want that are good enough for the album. This
next track, then, Mother Stands for Comfort. Tell me about this. More smashing plates, I noticed. I mean, babushka time again.
Yes, I thought that was a bit of a back to the ye old days. It was one of the few songs that was written around the piano. And it was just the concept of how mothers will hide their sons when they know that they've done something really bad, but they still have that maternal instinct that is much stronger than their feeling of what's right and wrong, and that their child is a part of them. And really, the mother is one of the few people that perhaps would have that extreme of view.
Talking about having been picked up so very early, do you think in a way, though, that 16 is almost too young, and that it would have been more valuable for you to have, I don't know, what do you want to call it, a normal life before the record business? No, I don't. I think, again, I was so lucky to, at such an early age, have such a desire to go in one direction, that I wanted to be totally involved in music. And what was brilliant, again, was that although I was being signed by the record company at that time, it wasn't really till 2 years later that I was actually working in the studio on the first album. And during that time, I left school and really started learning about the outside world, travelling and going to dance lessons. And in a way, my whole day was scheduled out as a sort of working towards what was coming up. And I think it's what I wanted. I wanted to be involved in music, and I felt that from then, in order to do it, I would have to work very hard. But was it a sort of conscious self-improvement plan as well? And as much as, if I can get good at this, then I ought to put a bit more effort into this area as well.
Yes, I was definitely at the age where you start looking into yourself and, wondering, where's life at? Who am I, man? And it was very useful for me because I could use it and channel it into my work. And I just have to say I've really been so lucky that I've been able to do what I want, and from such an early age.
But you obviously still are very self-analytical. I mean, I wonder sometimes if you are too much. Do you think sometimes you think too much about it or agonise too much over it all?
What particular thing would I be agonising over?
No, I don't know, but your work perhaps, I mean, would you sometimes just love to do something out of the blue?
Yes, and I think if I do, then I do that. But I find the obsession of my work really enjoyable, and I think the frustration and the pain is really all part of the end enjoyment, hopefully.
But because you're this critical of your own work, or this much of a perfectionist, I suppose, in your own work, are you like that with other people? Are you sometimes very difficult to work with in the studio or on stage?
No, I don't think I was difficult to work with on stage, because all the people there, we'd all rehearsed for such a long time. We all knew exactly what we were doing. And I don't think I'm difficult, but I'm demanding. I'm very demanding. I work very long hours, and I think some people find that hard. But I like to think that everyone enjoys working with me, or they wouldn't work with me again. And so far, I haven't had anyone refusing to. So.
But it's about having high standards, I suppose, isn't it?
But I think people that work with you appreciate that. Again, especially in a business where time and money and just personalities force you into situations where you can't do things properly. I think people find it rewarding to be somewhere where the care is being taken. And I think, if anything, they get a great sense of reward out of it themselves for being involved in something where they have had time to put their own care into it.
So, another track then from the album, the last one we'll play, Cloud Busting. Is this going to be the next single?
Yes, it is.
Tell me about this then.
This was inspired by a book that I found on a shelf about 9 years ago. It's out of print now, and it's an absolutely beautiful book. It's written from a child's point of view about his father, but it's being written by a very sad adult. And it's magical and very moving. And I suppose the child that's writing it, through the eyes of this child, he must be about 12, and his father is everything to him. It's his complete world. And his father has machines that can make it rain. And they go out together and they make it rain. And his father totally involves his son in a whole world of codes of, you mustn't lie, you must be good, you must be soft, you must understand. And all the way along he keeps telling his son that at some point he will probably be taken away, because his views are very open and a lot of people are narrow-minded and don't understand them. And really the book does build up to the point where he's taken away. And the rest of the book is about the man trying to cope without his father. It's a very special book.